are children and we have no autonomy over who influences us, right? Like what media we watch, which caretakers took care of us. Usually, we're not in control in the first, I would argue, 18 years of our life, right? Until most of us in the United States like went to college and actually had our worldview questioned for the first time by meeting people from different cultures, different environments. Like if you were lucky enough to even do that and go to college, if you're privileged enough to ever exit your bubble of your upbringing, right? Then
Mm,
you start to realize like the way you see the world and the way your nervous system responds to things is actually unique based on how you grew up. So all of us inherit our nervous system response to discomfort and threats and anything we perceive as could make us unsafe. And this was our like this is actually a very useful nervous system response, because if we are like driving in traffic and someone's veering into our lane, we want to flee, right? Like that's the right nervous system response in that situation. If there's a bear running at you, yeah, you want to get big and scream and fight,
right.
and like that is protecting you in that moment. Unfortunately, we learn these things in our childhood by observing our parents. How did our parents fight, or our caretakers? How did we see arguments on social media, on in movies, in our society, in our community? And on an unconscious level, we absorb the behavior that we see and that we develop in response to this, right? And so then we live our whole life and we keep getting into conflict and arguments and tense situations. And if we don't actually look at what we inherited and identify it, like what is my default nervous system response? Do I flee? Do I freeze? Do I fight? Do I fawn? And in which context do I do all of those things? Like maybe at work as a woman, I default to fawning. Maybe in my partnership, I default to fighting, right? Because that's how my parents did it. Or maybe in like when something comes up that triggers me or reminds me of a trauma I had, I freeze. So it could be different in every situation, but when we go into sympathetic state in our nervous system, our prefrontal cortex turns off. We literally lose access to the part of our brain we need to collaborate and connect and problem solve. And so most of the world, what you see on the news, in protests, in arguments, in debates, is two mammals whose prefrontal cortex is fully shut down,
Mm,
and they're in their default their unconscious nervous system, inherited nervous system response, and they're trying to get somewhere. Like they think that from that place, they're ever going to be able to find a solution, connect, problem solve, and it's literally impossible. So it's a losing game. It's like we're all
wow.
losing because none of us are able to, unless we've done the work to regulate our nervous system enough to stay in actual relationship with the person we disagree with, or who's triggering us, or who like in that moment my nervous system can't tell the difference between a bear and someone disagreeing with me. If I think someone disagreeing with me is a threat to my life, and it is true for certain marginalized groups, right? Like a person in a black body, a cop disagreeing with them could lead to the end of their life. So it's real. It's not, these nervous system reactions, they actually serve to try to protect us. There's nothing
Mm,
wrong with us, but we can actually learn how to relate to our nervous system through, honestly, through breath. Breath work is the
mm,
only remote control. Our breath is the only thing that we do consciously and unconsciously. And so if we learn very simple technical things, like that's why it's amazing to me, this course and this work, is because it's not about some kind of spiritual awakening even. It's about me understanding that I have very specific steps and tools I can use to keep my nervous system relaxed in on a comfortable and tense conversation, enough that I can actually find common ground with anyone, literally anyone, unless they're about to physically hurt me, right? So this is what the course is about, and it's like for anybody. It's for parents, for bosses, for managers, for like coaches, for yoga. It doesn't matter who you are. If you are like at night thinking about a conflict, or like fucking like you're spiraling, or you're like I can't work anymore in this environment because I can't advocate for my needs, or like I don't, I'm trapped, which I think a lot of people feel right now. Like these are the tools that have changed my life and are making me able to have really hard conversations with the people I need to have them with if I want the future I want to have. So
So I have
yeah,
a question, few questions. This is so cool.
yeah,
Um, how long is the course? Is it
yeah.
online?
It's
You
online.
have
It's
like
it's
you
fully
have
virtual. It's
okay.
10 weeks. September 11th is the first date of the first workshop. So it's 2 hour long workshops every other week.
Okay.
And in between, you have coursework on the portal. And the portal is like a whole online community. You have a chat, you have resources, you have lessons, you have direct messages, you can like meet in a huddle. So it's like a full community that you're joining. So every group, like you're getting to know all of the people in it. And in the workshop over the 10 weeks, you're learning all the tools and you're working on a real conflict in your life. So you're taking like this one conflict that I can't solve with my dad or whatever it is. And like personally, you're going to work through that conflict. And at the end of the 10 weeks, you're going to have a conversation with that person using all of the tools that you learn.
Wow.
So it's like,
Cool. You know
yeah.
what's crazy? That every time I've seen things online of the Inheritance Project, I thought it had to do with financial inheritance.
No.
That was my first things. I'm like, oh my gosh, so cool. Katya's focusing on wealth transfer and all.
Oh,
That was my initial impression that I got from seeing your program. So I haven't actually like I never really dove super deep into it because I have my own, you know, my own bias around inheritance and
yeah.
all.
No, it's true because everyone thinks of inheritance as just about material, tangible, visible things. But actually, what we're talking about is the invisible inheritance, the trauma, the cultural worldview, the behaviors, the nervous system, like all the things you inherit that are invisible that I can't see about you and you can't see about me. So you also have like people projecting onto each other all day long who we think these other people are in our life, but we don't know their invisible inheritance unless we actually are curious enough to hear the story. So the first workshop we do is an unpack your inheritance workshop where you are understanding what have I inherited about country, culture, class, color, creed, all of the things that I'm given that I don't necessarily have a choice over. And how
Hmm.
do those things shape my identity and what I choose for myself in my life? And so, how do I make a conscious choice, like which things I inherited I want to work on and I want to let go of or transform in my lifetime? And which things do I want to pass to my next 7 generations? So, Inheritance Project is this project of looking back 7 generations at everything I've received from my ancestors and society and all the decisions that people made before me and seeing myself as a result, like how I'm shaped by that, and then looking at what do I want for myself and what's going to stand in my way that I inherited. Like for me, I inherited complex PTSD. It is the number one thing that stands in my way of like the future I want to have with all my relations and like, the life that I want to live. And so, in order to actually do something about that, I think that's why it's my curse and my gift. Like if I didn't have this nervous system condition, I would have never learned about the nervous system and like all the tools that I actually needed to make a change,